So last time we talked about the circumference, so the distance around, and the area, the space inside of a circle, right? We learned about what the diameter is, which is all the way across a circle, and what the radius is, which is halfway across a circle. Now this picture is drawn with perspective. That means that even though R should be half of D, it looks shorter than that. That's because of the way it's drawn to make this cylinder look three-dimensional. So when we take a circle and we extend it into a three-dimensional figure, we get what we call a cylinder that contains space. It contains volume. It's more than just a flat area. It's a three-dimensional space called volume. Okay, so even though our little picture labels R as right there, R is also here because it's halfway across that diameter, right? So don't forget the fact that R is the diameter divided by 2. That might be really important sometimes if they give you the diameter but they don't give you the radius. Because notice our formula here is pi. Remember, we're going to use 3.14. Even though I wrote 3.1416, we're just going to use those 2 decimal places for Khan Academy. And then R is this radius. So if they give you the radius, that's great. You plug it in here and you multiply it times itself twice. If they don't give you the radius, if they give you the diameter instead, you have to make sure that you divide by 2 to find the radius. And then something even trickier, if they give you the circumference. Sorry, I shouldn't have written that first. Give me 1 second. If they give you the circumference instead, then you actually have to take the circumference and divide by 2 and divide by pi, so 3.14. So we talked about that last time when we found problems with area. We had to have R, and sometimes they gave us C, the circumference. So then we had to divide out 2 and 3.14 to actually find the radius. So here's 2 different ways to find the radius. If you know the diameter, you divide by 2. If you know the circumference, you divide by 2 and by pi. And then one of those, whichever situation you're in, that radius can be used here, multiplied times itself. And then the very last part we have in our formula here is h, which is height. So cylinders have this three-dimensional aspect to them, which means it's not just a circle, it's a circle with height. So there's the height of our cylinder, right? So even if a cylinder was turned sideways, we would still call the distance between the 2 circles the height. Even if it was sideways, it would be more of a width, but we just always call that the height, right? And the radius would be here, and those are the only numbers we need because we know what pi is. So pi is 3.14, and then we put in the radius, we multiply it times itself twice, we put in the height and multiply that, and we have the volume of a cylinder. Don't forget that your dimensions, your units are going to be in cubic units. So cubic units is what we're looking for when we do volume. Or we might write it like here, like this, like your unit measurement, like if it was miles or meters or inches or centimeters or whatever, then we do a little units cubed on it instead of squared that we did with area. So area was square units, or your unit with a little square or a little 2 on it. This time volume is cubic units, or units with a little cube on it, right? A little 3 on it. Okay, let's go through some examples. A water tank in the shape of a cylinder has a diameter of 20 and a height of 37. How much water will the tank hold? So notice they gave us the diameter. What number do we need to have? The formula again is pi r squared h. So we have h, height. What's the other number that we need to plug in? R. We need R, the radius. Do we have the radius? No, we have d, the diameter. So what do? We take our diameter and we divide it by 2. And that gives us the radius. What's the radius? 10. Awesome. Okay, so here's our formula. We're finding volume. We're going to plug in pi, so 3.14 we're going to plug in the radius, so 10, and then we have to multiply that times itself. So you either type it in times 10 times 10, or if you have on your calculator a little squared button where it says like x squared or something like that, you can use that instead. And then the last thing we're going to multiply is the height, which is 37. These are all in feet. That means our answer is going to be in cubic feet. Okay, so now we need a calculator so we can multiply all those numbers together. So 3.14 times 10 times 10 times 37. That gave me, if I did this right, 11,618 cubic feet. Or you could just write it as feet cubed, right? That means the same thing. Okay, try those numbers in your calculator. See if you get the same answer that I got. Next, example 2. Two cylinders have the same height of 6 inches. One has a radius that is 2 inches and the other has a radius of 4 inches. How many times bigger is the volume of the second cylinder as compared to the first? Well, this is a weird question. So we've got two cylinders. Here's one. My pictures are not great. It has a height of 6 and a radius of 2. And we have a different one that also has a height of 6, but it has a radius of 4. Right? So let's go ahead and find the volumes of those, and then we're going to compare the two volumes and see how much bigger it is. How much bigger do you think it'll be? 2 times bigger. That's our guess. So we have a guess of the volume being 2 times bigger. Let's give it a try. So volume pi r squared h is going to be 3.14 times 2 times 2 times 6. Let's calculate that one. So 3.14 times 2 times 2 times 6. So for the first one, I get a volume of 75.36 cubic inches, right? Okay, let's do our second cylinder. The only thing that changes is the radius. So pi is still the same, but the radius is 4 this time, and then the height is 6. Go ahead and calculate that one for me. I have an answer. I'm going to give you another couple seconds to find your answer. So we get a volume of 301.44 inches cubed, which means our volume is 4 times as much. When the radius was doubled, the volume quadruples. Doesn't just double, it quadruples because it's squared. So it's not just timesing by 2, it's timesing by 2 times 2. All right.